to try something different. I'm going to go live on YouTube. Normally on Mondays, well, normally I've done it a couple of times, but I'm going to go live on Instagram on Mondays, and then I'm going to try to do live stream on Thursdays on YouTube. So as we start here, there probably won't be too many folks joining the YouTube channel session, just simply because I have a fraction of the YouTube followers that I do, you know, compared to Instagram and Facebook and so forth. So if you're catching this, you know, maybe I'll try to get this more frequently at a specific time, specific day, and that way you could, you know, ask any questions and I can share some more insights and stuff. But I am going to assemble a Travis piece today. I'm doing the Travis diver, and I'm going to do the, let's catch a little bit of the light there, the Lagoon dial. So the Travis model has been in the lineup for a couple years now, and I'm getting ready to refresh the colors. And so I'm just about out of black, I'm just about out of green, like literally 3 or 4 left of each color. And then I'm going to move to, I've got a handful, a little bit more than a handful actually, of the Lagoon and the Sky, but down to, you know, I think 20 or so pieces each. So refresh is coming, and it's going to be 3 different colors, some different changes to those particular, to that Travis model as well. But I thought I'd assemble a, you know, a piece right now, the Travis, and bear with me as I'm learning YouTube and so forth, meaning that Instagram's very simple and easy to see questions that come up in the same feed of the video that I'm shooting. And so not exactly sure how to manage those types of moderation questions and so forth inside of YouTube, but we'll give it a shot. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the assembly. I'll switch glasses here, and using the Sellita SW200 automatic mechanical. The date wheel you can see is actually on this. The date wheel is a part of all of the pieces, but I simply just don't have a date window in the dial itself on the Travis. So there is a ghost movement, or a ghost position, if you will. That's, you know, that you'll feel as you pull the crown out. But let's get going. I've got all the parts and pieces laid out here, and I know it may be a little bit harder to see from that distance. And again, bear with me as I'm going through and learning how to use YouTube, and maybe a couple of different camera angles in the future. So here we go. Let's get at it. So first thing we do, if this was a dated piece, we would line up the date wheel to actually flip over right at 12 o'clock. We don't have to worry about that with this particular one, simply because there is no date window. So I'm just going to take the little tensioners that hold the dial feet in place, take my hour wheel, and make sure the teeth, the gears are lined up, and then the spacer that goes between the movement and the dial itself. So once we have those in place, we line up the dial into that into the dial feet channels, if you will, where those tensions get pushed back in. So this is, I know I've talked about this on Instagram, but the pad here is a almost, I can't really say gelatin because it's not gelatin, it's a fixed, but very, very soft. It's not going to hurt the hands, not going to hurt the dial, so that's why I can lay the dial over like that without worrying about scratching anything. But also just the makeup of the Travis model, it has a chapter ring around the outer edge of the dial, which, and I'm just pushing those dial feet tensioners in. That's what affixes the dial to the movement. But in any event, the Travis dial has that chapter ring around it, and so the main dial base plate, which is a brass base plate with you know, then the texturing layered on it, and then, you know, either painted or applied you know, coloring is placed over it. But nonetheless, that chapter ring prevents it from actually touching the pad anyway. So once we get that, there's a movement holder here that then I'll begin setting the actual hands. So the hour hand goes first, and I have the hand setting tool. So this is a Horatech. There's a couple of different models in my my showroom. I've got the different version that actually has 3 little plungers, so I can put the hour, minute, and second hand sizing cap on each one of the plungers. This one just has the one, so if I'm changing a bunch of different, if it's, especially like if it's a GMT or even the Waterloo, the hands are such different sizes, so much smaller, that I do have to change the tip on this plunger. But with the Travis, the hands are actually, they're pretty similar in size in terms of their circumference, so I can use just the one. And then I use a manual one for the actual seconds hand, but I'll show you that here in a second. So we put the hour hand on first. It doesn't matter where it goes, simply because there is no date window to flip over, so we just apply it, press it into place, and then line it up to the 12 o'clock position, making sure it's exactly centered. And then the minute hand is then applied over that. And this one we can actually move very, very slightly. So what I typically do is I get it just barely seated, and then make the kind of the final very precise adjustments to make sure it's lined up and level and so forth, so that the hands don't overlap. But there's a little bit more flexibility in this one in terms of once you get it seated. So again, I just barely get that push down, and then I can very gently kind of position it into that very straight you know, overlap with the hour hand, and making sure it's in between and in the middle of the 12 o'clock markers there. So once we get that, we get it pushed fully onto the hour or the minute wheel. And right now what I'm doing is I'm checking to make sure that it is absolutely level. So again, that the hour and the minute hand don't, you know, overlap and touch each other, and as well that it's not pointing up, so that the seconds hand, as it sweeps, doesn't interfere as well. And what I do is I take the time and I set it to 6 o'clock, so that way it's going straight up north and south, and making sure that the logo, making sure that the type down below, all of that is exactly centered. And so you can tweak it just a little bit. In the movement itself, you can kind of tweak it just a little bit, but it, you know, typically the dial should be very, very, you know, precise in its arrangement. So that looks great. I'm going to take some Rodico here just to pick up the seconds hand. Like I said, I'm going to use my manual hand setting tool. The red end on this particular one is, you know, the small, very, very small opening to allow to set the seconds hand. So this one, use the Rodico to get it onto the pin, very gently press it down, and again, same thing, rotate it around, make sure it's exactly flat, and there are no issues. Looks good. So the Rodico also just kind kind of take a look in any tiny little pieces of lint. I don't know if you heard, it might have canceled it out, but I've got a dog, and so he was barking away. But in any event, there's little tiny hairs every now and then that make it up here. But doing the Rodico and then just forced air to make sure all of those are nice and clean. I don't have a clean room, so to speak, like you would see in maybe a large manufacturing facility, but this room stays pretty clean. So what I'm doing is I'm just using a very small end of the micro or of the precision screwdriver to push down the tension pin that holds in the actual stem and temporary crown. So that way I can actually cut the stem to the proper length. So I just simply take this temporary crown. They're just packaged that way from Sellita, the Swiss manufacturer of the movements. And then I use my stem cutting tool. Again, it's another model from Horatec. Bergeon and Horatec are the two main providers I use for the tools, and they are phenomenal and very precise. And there is I've mentioned this before on my Instagram live streams, that it makes a big difference. The tool actually makes a very big difference in how precise things are, whether they're the screwdrivers themselves and how the metal wears or chips, because if you use a cheap steel, it will, to the tweezers and how the tweezers align at the very tips. I mean, in the years that I've been doing this, I've learned a lot, and skimping on the tools is absolutely not the correct thing to do. So I have these, the different kind of stem lengths marked on this tool, so that way I can, with precision get the same length every single time. So I'm just setting this to that proper length, and then a little bit of a pulling of the lever, and there she goes, and here's the end of it. So I will take now the actual crown, apply a little bit of Loctite 242. This version of Loctite creates a pretty good stickiness. So I use this on the bracelet screw pins, on the crown. It'll keep that screw in place without permanently affixing it. So there are some versions of Loctite that basically melt the thing. It's not melting, obviously, but chemically bonds those two metals together. So I'm just tightening the crown into the stem. Got a nice firm placement there. And then now I take the case. The case already has the crystal pressed in. Sometimes I have to remove the crystal if I don't know, got a broken sapphire bezel or something like that. Take the crystal out so I can remove the bezel, but the factory I use, it comes with that. So the next step really is to ensure that there's no particles underneath the sapphire crystal now. So I use, this will be real boring for lack of a better term, but I'm going to just take a second here, use the Rodico, take a look underneath the crystal, and very gently clean anything underneath there so that it's a nice crystal clear view of the dial without any particles, anything like that. Sometimes it's they're absolutely spotless clean, and sometimes there's a little bit of debris underneath just from the packaging itself. The crystals are sapphire, like I said. They are this is a a 200 meter, 656 feet rated dive watch, so the crystals are actually pretty thick. They are coated underneath the crystal, so not on top so it doesn't scratch off, but they're coated underneath with an anti-reflective coating. And surprisingly, it throws off a little bit of a blue hue on the black dialed version, but you can't see it otherwise. It's just a little bit of an interesting optical illusion, if you will. But folks that get the black dial every now and then, they'll say, is that a blue? A little bit of a blue dial? And it's just that anti-reflective coating, and you can see that on some other watches as well. But just going through, making sure I've got everything nice and clean underneath. I mentioned this before. It's kind of like watching paint dry, seeing me just stare at a crystal here, but that looks good. Then I set it on here just to see if I see anything under magnification, because of course what I can see versus what you see with like a naked eye is very, very different. But a lot of you folks that buy DuFrane pieces even come into the showroom with a loupe, and so I know that it's really, really important to make sure everything is absolutely clean. So, see, I saw a little tiny speck there when I had it on the dial. It's kind of funny. You can see some things sometimes pop up just when there is a contrast of the dial, contrast of color of the dial. So, okay, that looks really good. Okay, so what we do now is, well, what we're doing now is casing it. So take the movement holder out and very carefully get the stem and crown seated, and then the movement holder. So I use a Teflon movement holder in several of the pieces. Some of them I use a stainless steel movement holder. There's no difference in performance. This one's just a lighter weight. The diving, you know, the Travis diver is a pretty thick case and pretty thick crystal, sapphire crystal, and pretty thick case back to keep the integrity of that 200 meters intact. So just to kind of help reduce the weight, it also has a full bracelet. I opted to use the sapphire crystal. I'm sorry, of course I use the sapphire, of the Teflon movement holder. All right, so now that I've got that in place, there's a couple of tiny little screws that we use to kind of get the movement and the movement holder affixed. It really doesn't move. There's tiny little indentations in the case as well. There are tiny little jettisons from the movement holder, so that keeps the movement from spinning around whenever you adjust the time or wind the watch or anything like that. But I just think it's a good idea to always still use these screws to ensure that that connection to the movement and the movement holder is really in place. So it's I guess it's kind of like wearing a belt and suspenders. You're doubly safe that way. All right, so what I do is then give this about 25, 30 cranks to get it running nice and powerful. And I'm going to go take it over to the timing machine and check the timing and regulation, make sure there's no beat error, make sure that it is running. I'm going to tune it. Usually they leave the shop in that range of +2. Sometimes I do get them to +1, but I try to get them no more than +4. And so these are fantastic movements from that perspective. You can absolutely, regulate these things and tune these things. The Sellita SW200 movement, phenomenal. And these are elaborate grades, so these are very, very high quality, serviceable for decades, right? Any watchmaker can service these every 7 years or so, somewhere in that range. You can take them in and get service. They're just phenomenal movements. So the next step, like I said, is to go ahead and get it timed. And then I would apply the sapphire bezel. And the sapphire bezel, there's different colors of these, but these are a sapphire crystal within the color is actually painted on the back, and then there is a application, the lume is applied to the 12, 3, 6, and 9 marks, and then there's an application that's applied over that to keep it waterproof. This one is actually a mirror. It's kind of hard to tell. It picks up everything, but it's a mirror polish. So it literally is a mirror, and so whatever you've got around you, it's going to pick up. That's what's really kind of cool about the Lagoon, in my opinion anyway, the Lagoon version of the Travis. It's a really interesting kind of turquoise color within that mirror polish. But so, you know, I'm not going to, my little timing station, you can probably see it back over here, but the timing station's back there. I can't really move the camera, so if I do that, I'll just go out of frame. But maybe on the next one, I'll capture, like I said, a couple of different angles. So that's it, man. That's the assembly. So that you can see when there's no problems, no issues, and I've got everything kind of laid out. You know, it's somewhere around 20 minutes to do to assemble a piece. And you know, but then there are times where, you know, we've got to do a little tweaking. Maybe something's wrong with the movement. Maybe something's not quite right with the case, but typically speaking, 20 or so minutes to get a piece assembled. So, all righty, I will stop it here, and thank you all so much for watching. Like I said, bear with me as I'm getting more used to how to do a live stream on YouTube and how to moderate comments and things like that. So, you know, we'll both be learning. All right, thanks, y'all. Hope you have a very good day. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.